everyone, Adam Gelman here again with a new video. Wanted to take some time to go through something that is newer to wrestling cards as of the Panini era, the beginning of the Panini era, but a lot of wrestling collectors probably haven't had much exposure to, and that is the first off the line program that Panini offers with some of their products. In wrestling, we've seen it a couple of times now with Prizm, Impeccable, and a few others. We likely will get another version of First Off the Line for Immaculate. It hasn't been confirmed or denied yet, but I think given the nature of the product, it's likely to be a part of the license checklist, or a part of the checklist, as the license that Panini has for WWE gives them a lot of leeway in creating sort of this model. I'm going to go back to kind of where this came from and why it has become an interesting subject in the hobby. Some people love it, some people don't, and we'll get into that, but also some of the impact that it's had on values and stuff like that. So let's take a step back in time and let's look at how cards are usually sold to the end consumer. Manufacturer creates all the plans for the cards, they create all the art for the cards, they have all the licensing for the cards. Everything goes through a process with them where basically in building out a product, they have a budget, they have an idea of what it's supposed to look like, and they know who they can and can't include. They also know who's going to sign cards, they know what relics they have to include in that those parts of the sets, and they put it all together in terms of like a plan and files and everything to actually produce the cards. The printing of the cards is done usually by a third party, as is the assembly of the cards, applying stickers and stuff like that. All of it gets sent back to the manufacturer for a review, and then they start sending out cards or organizing signings to get cards signed on card if they need to, or getting those cards to the pack-out vendor who eventually puts them in the boxes. Once the pack-out vendor has everything boxed out by cases, boxes, whatever, then they usually go to a couple of different areas. Historically, before a lot of the new sort of distribution model took hold, Panini used to probably go through distributors like GTS, Peach State, Southern Hobby. Like there's a bunch of like mass distributors that have huge relationships with hobby shops all over the country, so that as Panini creates product, as Topps creates product, as Upper Deck creates product, they are the ones that actually take the product from the manufacturer and bring it directly to the hobby shops. The hobby shops then sell to their customers, and that's the way that goes. More, within the last 10 years, breakers have gotten involved sometimes. The distributors sell to the breakers. Sometimes the breakers get it directly from the manufacturer. There are also hobby shops that have direct relationships with the manufacturer, so there's no distributor that sits in the middle. But as you can see, there's like a big web of like sales that goes along with every product that is released. So instead of just saying, I'm going to buy this box from Panini, it's going to come to my house, I'm going to open it, and I need to get value out of that, there's now a number of different levels within the sales process, all of which have to make money. The manufacturer has to make money, the distributor has to make money, the hobby shop has to make money, and then eventually the collector has to make money too if they're going to resell these cards. So as it goes through the sales process at a retail level, like a shop or a distributor, there's margins involved. So what the dealer cost might be from Panini to a distributor and a distributor to a hobby shop is not the same price that you are paying as a consumer. So each of those levels, there's a specific built-in margin that has, a way for those individual entities to make money. With the first sort of direct-to-consumer model that started, Topps created Topps Now, and they created a few other ways that they cut out everything in the middle, and they just went directly to the consumer. You could buy boxes off of their website. Some of those products were only available on their website. They weren't there through online retailers. So like there's a lot of different things that exist. There's also online retailers that exist as distributors too. So like huge, complex woven web here, as I said. So if you go back to the beginning of First Off the Line, it was created as a direct-to-consumer model to incentivize collectors to engage with the manufacturer directly. I can imagine this probably didn't go over too well with that web of people that all have to make money on product, especially knowing that the consumer now has a direct route to buy boxes directly from the manufacturer, and to see that they also added additional content to make that even more valuable of a relationship. I can't imagine that that was a positive discussion that was had when that was originally the case back in the mid 2010s. Originally, it didn't go over well with the collectors either. I remember for football, Prism football specifically, there were some first off the line added value to those boxes that were like different colored parallels, because Prism is based on all of these parallels and stocks and stuff like that that collectors have to build a rainbow. The first off the lines were really low numbered, like out of six or something like that. It was some really tiny number, and this was really before the boom where everything was valuable. So creating this additional sort of um, situation where a collector would be able to engage with Panini directly, get a guaranteed really low number parallel. It wasn't the same as it is now, because now anything that's low numbered for Prism is automatically valuable. And, it took a while for this to catch on, but after doing it product after product in the NBA and the NFL, it really caught on to the point now where Panini is forced to do Dutch auctions to ensure that they can sell this at a fair rate. So before, it used to be they would just load the entire product onto their website, and if it crashed, it crashed, and most of the times it did, because you would have like an exquisite level product like National Treasures, Flawless, whatever. And I say exquisite level product because that's really where those configurations came from. And you also had these flagship level products like Prism or Optic or whatever, and they all had first off the line releases that a ton of people ended up wanting, because, again, as loyalty builds within the collector base, so does the value of those cards. And you can imagine that if you put a Prism product that only has 1,000 cases out of, compared to a 1,000 case run, it's going to be extremely limited, right? Usually a Prism run is 15,000, 25,000 cases. The first off the line is a fraction of that, right? So you can imagine why the website would crash. And it ended up being like bots that people had set up to continually refresh the website and hit checkout really fast, would clear out a huge amount of this product. Some of it went to Blowout, some of it went to DA, Card World. Like, they would buy from people who would buy these boxes through their bots or whatever. I mean, it just became this really controversial process. Meanwhile, the value of the cards kept going up and up and up and up, especially for National Treasures, where the best product of the year, as I mentioned in a previous video, like National Treasures is the top product in the hobby, the most valuable product in the hobby. They offered Stars and Stripes rookie patch autographs, which are a low numbered parallel of the best cards in the product, available directly from the manufacturer, all loaded at once. You can imagine the mad scramble that happened for those. Once Panini started to realize that this was probably not a real fair process, because the wrong people, like the consumers, weren't ending up with the boxes. Basically, the boxes themselves became insanely valuable. They were kept sealed. They were sold to other people. They traded hands a bunch of times. It wasn't really the true type of program that they had envisioned. Now, I'm sure they weren't like sad that everything was selling out so fast, but like Vince McMahon always says, if we've sold out, we haven't made enough. So, there was trying to be a balance between the cost of the first off the line product and the eventual sales process that it takes to get there. So now let's talk about like what a first off the line product really represents. It's not actually probably the first cards off the line. It is a direct to consumer gimmick to help sell product directly to a group of consumers that wouldn't normally be buying from the manufacturer. And they've created special parallels to help bring forth a value to do so. So Prism, Immaculate, National Treasures, Flawless, they all have really important cards included in these first off the line boxes that aren't available in the hobby boxes. So even if you went to a hobby store, bought a regular box of Prism or Treasures or Flawless or whatever, you would not have access to these parallels. They're not included. So that's what made those boxes so valuable. And because the cards were so hard to get a hold of, most of the wax wasn't being ripped. When it was ripped, it wasn't always the right players or whatever. So you had cards that would never see the light of day. So when they did, they become ultimately more valuable, right? So let's look at how this pertains to wrestling cards, because the first product that we saw have a first off the line component in wrestling was Prizm. And at the time, Prizm was, the price for the wax was insane. It got way overheated really fast. So when the first off the line boxes hit in a Dutch auction format, it started at like a ridiculous number, like $5,000 a box, or I can't even remember what it was, but it was a lot. By the time it sold out, it was still well above $1,000 a box. So if you were in on that initial Dutch auction, which dropped price starting from the ceiling all the way down to the floor every few minutes, the price kept down, coming down, coming down, coming down until all the product was sold, and it sold out above the floor, which was $1,000. So there were people who were buying cases and cases of first off the line Prizm WWE because of one specific element, which is the blue shimmer parallels and the gold shimmer parallels out of 10 and out of 3 respectively. They also had all of the hobby parallels in there too. So you could still get a gold Prizm, you could still get the black Prizm, you had all the dual autographs and every bit of the hobby content, but you were guaranteed an out of 10 or an out of 3 card in every box. And you can imagine for Prizm, where those cards become exceptionally valuable, like why it's such an important piece of why that is all about, what that's all about. Now, for Impeccable, where we saw it again, not as much of a fun experience because the red metal cards weren't as valuable. It's just one of those things, like collectors really have to latch on to something for it to, as a group, latch on to something for it to really have value, because multiple people need to want these cards. The metal cards were already unpopular, just in the general scheme of things, and adding that as the only first off the line exclusive, it just didn't go over very well. I assume that there will be additional first off the line cards for Immaculate. Usually there is a base parallel and or an auto relic parallel. So we could see some crazy stuff happen. But, the Prizm ones ended up not being as valuable now as they were at release. Traditionally, the most valuable parallel, other than the black 101s, which I'm not even counting this, is the golds out of 10. So the blue shimmers in Prizm were out of 10 as well. And there's just not a correlation there. The numbering isn't what makes those cards valuable. It's the color of the base. So if you had a flat gold, base card that was The Rock, we saw the PSA 8 sell for $11,400, both buyer's premium and golden. If you have a Rock blue shimmer at the same grade, it's not going to be worth the same amount of money. If not a fraction of that money. It's a weird thing, and people really have a hard time grasping this, because if a card is numbered the same, the availability is the same, why isn't it worth the same? And it's because of a lot of different reasons with the legacy hobby value that a gold Prizm has. The gold shimmers out of 3 traditionally don't sell for as much as the golds either. However, because wrestling is a player collector driven sport, there are a ton of player collectors just hoping to find those gold shimmers somewhere. The first off the line wax for Prizm WWE was so expensive that a lot of them were sealed. Like, he continue to be sealed. You can buy them online still. They've come down drastically in price, just like the rest of the Prizm wax. But those cards are still probably going to incite bidding wars when you get them. I still the one of the last cards I need for my Becky Lynch rainbow is the gold shimmer out of 3. I've seen 1, so there's still 2 out there. The person that owns that one I can't get in touch with to even see if they would sell it. But if somebody finds that, like, I need that for my rainbow, just like a lot of the other player collectors that are out there. So if you are able to pull a blue shimmer, you're able to pull one of those gold shimmers per box, you can see the value in ripping those at like $379 a box or whatever they're at right now. We also saw that as people were ripping a lot of these first off the line Prizm boxes, they were seeing black 1-of-1s come out at a more advanced rate than what we were seeing in hobby. I think I saw a couple of the blacks come out of those cases, and that's an incentive alone. Those blacks are the most valuable cards in Prism. So, overall, like when we look at the different first off the line exclusives, like many of the wrestling collectors have never experienced this. There was never a Topps program that was very similar to this. And when you add in the white sparkles for that we saw released on Panini's website, the premium box sets, I mean, there's a lot of complexity to this checklist. And so I think there's going to be a massive need within the community to have education on this. So as we get going through a lot of these discussions, the need for education becomes more and more as the situations become more complex. As you get into a product like Prism or Select or whatever, which has 20 to 30 parallels per card, like you can imagine why somebody who doesn't have the hobby familiarity would need to have an understanding of why a first off the line card is much different than a hobby card. Um, and that's kind of what I've been aiming to do with a lot of these videos. These concepts are not specific to wrestling; they're hobby wide. So I've had a lot of experience with a lot of them. A lot of others have not. Even more than that, there's a vast difference in value for all the first off the line exclusives. So you can't even compare apples to apples with first off the line. Like you can't just say natively they're 60% of the value, because some are going to be worth 80% of the value, some are going to be worth 10% of the value. It's just like there's just so much sophistication in the way that the collecting public views these cards. A lot of it stems from the fact that they're not hobby pack pulled cards, which again, collectors are weird in that respect. If it's not available in a widely distributed box, then it's not going to be worth as much as something that's an exclusive. It's kind of like a punishment for having to pay more money for this. The only time where that really isn't the case is these Stars and Stripes parallels for National Treasures, which, again, they're rookie patch autographs. Some of those go for insane amounts of money, especially because they have logo patches and they have parallels of those and all these different things. Like you can imagine that there's just a ton of discrepancy between each level of this hobby. And so I encourage you guys to sort of do your own research and see, like, as these are announced, because Prism 2023 WWE is likely right around the corner. We're probably a couple of months away from the release, and we're probably only a few weeks away from what it may be a sell sheet. So, like, as you start to see the new version of Prism have its first off the line and what are involved there, how do you compare the value of that wax versus the hobby wax? Like, there's just so much going on here. And I think that's the point, right? It's to create avenues for the collector to stay busy and keep spending money. And personally, I think the more of these types of situations where we can buy directly from the consumer instead of having to rely on distributor networks, which traditionally haven't been the most ethical organizations and have had a number of controversies associated with them. I mean, I love going to my hobby shop. I'm never going to say that you shouldn't go to a hobby shop. They serve a purpose as unlike anything else in this collecting world. And they get them too. So you can actually probably buy some first off the line boxes from hobby shops now because they've become such a part of the understanding of the way things go. So yeah, overall, like it's just a matter of finding the best way to engage for yourself and finding what makes your collection complete. Because if you feel like the hobby parallels aren't enough for you, you want to go full rainbow, like that's another piece of it that's really cool. I mean, don't even get me started on what happened with like the Asia exclusives too. So Immaculate's slated to come out here on February 8th. I would assume we'll hear more about whether or not there will be a first off the line contingent right before that. You'll see it go up on Panini's website. Keep an eye out for the Dutch auction. Look at what the ceiling price is. Look at what the floor price is. The floor price is usually right where the hobby boxes are selling on the secondary market. So I'm going to guess for Immaculate, depending on what the exclusive is, they'll probably sell out above the floor price. The first cases we've seen of Immaculate the first allocations have already been sold. So like we're going to start to see the box prices likely go up and then probably come down a little bit. But yeah, as the excitement grows, like these are an opportunity to sort of engage with a product in a much different way than has ever been available before in the previous 50 years of the hobby, right? Um, it just relies on you as a collector to be able to better understand how these distribution models impact the way that you collect, because some of it's just a marketing gimmick. Others actually do provide additional value above the hobby box as it was standing. So I think it's cool to educate people on this because, as I said, many WWE collectors really haven't had an opportunity to understand what First Off the Line is really all about. So follow me on Twitter at SC Uncensored. Follow me on Instagram at WWE Gelman. I've covered a lot of stuff on my website, www.sportscardsuncensored.com. I'll continue to write about this and continue to make videos, but this is the one that just sort of popped into my head today, and I thought it was a cool topic to cover. Thanks again, guys.